All right, eighth graders, today we are looking at 5.4 unit rates and slope. So let's check out our warm-up question. The graph shows the results of a plant growing contest among 3 friends at a local plant club. Which friend's plant grew the fastest? Explain how you know. So obviously we have 3 distinct lines. Friend 1 plant started at a height of 4 inches and declined down to 0. So clearly not the fastest growing. Friend 2 started at 6 inches and had a positive slope, so steadily grew, steadily inclined over time. Friend 3's plant started at 2 inches, but also steadily inclined. So between friend 2 and 3, we need to decide whose grew the fastest. So to do this, we can look at the slope. So I'm going to look at 2 points on this line. I'm going to look at this point, which is 0, 6, and this point, which is 2, 8. And I'm going to calculate the slope of those lines by doing my change in y. So I take my y coordinates and I subtract them over the change in x. So I take my x coordinates and I subtract them. And I find that the slope was 2 over 2, which reduces to 1. So this plant for friend 2 grew at a rate of 1 inch a week. Let's compare that to friend 3, and we'll do this in blue so it matches the graph. So again, I'm going to choose 2 points, and I need to pick one that I know the exact location for, so I'm going to pick these 2. And my first point is over 0 up 2. My second point is over 3 up 6. So I'm going to find the slope by doing my change in y, so I subtract my y coordinates, over the change in x, so I subtract my x coordinates. 6 minus 2 is 4, 3 minus 0 is 3, so I end up with a slope of 4/3, and I know that 4/3 is more than 1, so friend 3, the fastest growing plant, because the slope of the graph is the steepest. We are going to skip this and move on to this graph that shows the amount of milk used to make a particular cheddar cheese. How many ounces of cheese can you make per gallon of milk? So here's where the rate is coming into play. We are looking at a ratio of 2 different quantities and comparing them. Ounces per gallon. Ounces per gallon is the rate we're looking at. So as I look on my graph, I see 2 points here I could use to calculate the slope. My first point is 0, 0. My second point is 232. So to find the slope of this line, because remember that's how I'm going to find my unit rate, or my rate of ounces per 1 gallon of milk, I'm going to go ahead and subtract. So my change in y, so I subtract my y coordinates over my change in x when I subtract my x coordinates. And I end up with 32 over 2, which I know reduces to 16. So I need 16 ounces of cheese, or I can make 16 ounces of cheese per gallon of milk that I use. So you probably remember from 7th grade that we know it's a unit rate when I find my ratio per 1 quantity. So in this one, we have a graph that shows the amount of milk needed to make a quantity of butter. I know I'm looking for a unit rate because I'm looking for how many gallons of milk per pound, per 1 pound of butter. So I'm looking at gallons per 1 pound. So this is going to be my unit rate. So to do that, that is just like finding the slope of my line. So I'm going to take my 2 points and use them to find the slope. I have the 0.00 and I have the 0.25. So to find my slope or my unit rate, I'm going to do the change in y, so I subtract my y values, over the change in x. I subtract my x values. And I end up with 5/2. If I want to, for my rate, change that to a mixed number, I could call that 2.5 gallons per pound. All right, this time you are going to draw out your graph on graph paper. So your neighbor burns 88 calories in 8 minutes of cross-country skiing. So I could start by writing this as a rate, 88 calories per 8 minutes. And this is a proportional relationship between the calories burned and the amount of time I spend skiing. On part A, I want to know what is the unit rate of calories per minute. Right now I know calories per 8 minutes, but I want to know calories per 1 minute. So I'm going to figure out the unit rate. So you may be thinking back to time well spent in your 7th grade math class where you figured how to turn a rate into a unit rate. So basically, if I know my rate per 8 minutes and I want to turn that into a unit rate per 1 minute, I'm going to divide the top and bottom of this ratio by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 88 divided by 8 is 11. So that would be 11 calories per minute. On part B, I'm going to use this unit rate to draw a graph that models this situation. So I already have the x-axis labeled here with time in minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and draw my x and y axis. And I need to label them. My y-axis is total calories, but I need to figure out what scale I want to count by on my graph. So I know that I'm going to graph this, and I want to include my unit rate, which is 11 calories per 1 minute, but I also want to include on my graph all the way up to at least 8 minutes. So I'm thinking I will probably count by ones on my x-axis, but I'm going to label every other line here so that my scale doesn't get too jumbled. So I'm counting by ones, but I'm just labeling every 2. And on my y-axis, I need to go from 11 calories all the way up to 88. So I'm thinking I might want to count by about 10s here. But again, I'm going to label just every other line so that my scale and my intervals are still readable. So now let's go ahead and graph the points that I know. I have my unit rate, which tells me that I can burn 11 calories in 1 minute. So as an ordered pair, 1 is my x value and 11 is my y value. So I can go over 1 and up 11. And then I also know that I burned 88 calories in 8 minutes. 8 minutes is my x value, 88 calories is my y value, so I can, from the origin, go over 8 and up 88. Now, I'm not going to start my graph at 0 unless I know for sure that that's a point on here. So I can connect the 2 points that I have, and I can use that now to calculate my slope. So I have my 2 points, and if I put these side by side, I can calculate my slope of this line by doing the change in y. So I'm going to subtract my y values over the change in x. Subtract my x values. So 88 minus 11 is 77. 8 minus 1 is 7. And I know that 77 minus or divided by 7 is 11, which we had already determined up here as well, that we burned 11 calories per minute. So now we can see that our slope matches up directly, the slope of our line matches up directly with our unit rate. So two different ways of finding the same thing. All right, it is your turn to go ahead and work this problem out, comparing fathoms to feet. You can work this out on your graph paper with your partner. Make sure you label your X and Y axis, and I will be around to check your work. So pause the video until you are complete with that, and then let's work this last problem together. Your friend borrows $200 from her parents. The graph shows how much money she owes her parents. How much is she repaying her parents per week? So I'm hearing a unit rate here because we want to know dollars per week. So per 1 unit of time. How long will it take your friend to repay her loan? So you can see here that we started with $200, but that's steadily decreasing because we're paying that money back to our parents. So if I am looking for how much I'm repaying per week, then I need to know the slope of this line. So I can use 2 points on my line that I know exact locations for. So my first point, I go over 0 and up 200. And my second point, I go over 2 and up 160. So if I want to find the slope of this line, I'm going to do my change in y. So 160 minus 200 over my change in x. So 2 minus 0. Notice I'm going to get a negative number here, but that's okay because I am losing money because I'm paying it back. So that's money coming out of my pocket. That's why I'm going to have a negative amount. So 160 minus 200 is negative 40. 2 minus 0 is 2. So this will reduce to negative 20. So my unit rate is that I'm paying back $20 per week. And secondly, how long will it take your friend to repay her loan? So I'm going to pay 20 per week until I get all the way down to 0. So now I need to determine how I can use this line to help me answer that question. So let's go ahead and make a table for what we know. At 0 weeks, I owe $200. After 1 week, I'm sorry, we'll use these points here. After 1 week, I'm going to owe 20 less than that, right? Because we just found that we're paying 20 per week. So I'm going to owe 180. After 2 weeks, I'm going to owe 160. After 3 weeks, I'm going to owe 140. After 4 weeks, I'm going to owe 120. And this is going to keep decreasing over time. So we're about to run out of time, so I skipped ahead and finished this table for you. As we continue paying $20 a week, at that rate, we would see it would take us 10 weeks paying $20 a week to pay back all $20. So you are now ready for your 5.4 digits homework. Good luck, everybody.